My goodness.
Talk no more, none of that shit. I'm gonna let you say
Let's go, hey.
got me started. Wrist frames carded. Pull up double parking. Don't even pay like I'm the owner. My young niggas retarded.
Yo, what up, guys? We're on the clock. It's Caleb back again with Julian. Long time no see on the Zoom call. At least we just got back from the Portsmouth Invitational Tournament this weekend. That's our city. We had a great time. Thanks to all the staff at Portsmouth for putting on a great event that we thoroughly enjoyed. To all the connections and people that we were able to meet, whether it was the first time in person and we connected before, or it was our first time meeting you all together at the event. It was an extreme pleasure for real to meet like a lot of excellent basketball minds and just great people.
Yeah, man. You know how you have an expectation for something and like sometimes it'll be like close to it. This is one where like absolutely
So Ohio
smashed
trip was all
my
right.
expectations.
So Ohio trip was all right.
Yeah. I mean,
Portsmouth,
Ohio is Ohio. No offense to any of our listeners that live in Ohio, especially Portsmouth. Portsmouth. Hey, if you ever want to go on vacation, go to Portsmouth, Virginia.
they got a lot of stuff there. You'll figure it out pretty quick. All right. All that aside, we were there for the games and the games primarily. And we had a treat. I was able to catch, I don't know, I think 8 of the 11 or 12 games, if I'm not mistaken. So, a decent hit rate. We were able to at least see every single player once.
Yeah.
And what we're doing here is we're going to do a little draft format for our recap under the two premises. We're drafting a team of Portsmouth players that obviously played on, out of the 64 player pool only. We're drafting the team based on the premise that, we're competing against other Portsmouth-esque teams. So the teams that would be built, strategically out of the remaining players that we wouldn't pick. So we want to build teams that can, obviously not going to leave players off that, would hurt our chances to win. And, we're operating kind of on this interesting plane of we're also trying to talk to you guys about how we view these guys as draft prospects. So we wanted to kind of think about it and we'll pitch to you in different ways, different players that could be different options in different scenarios, or guys that maybe are just, we liked this guy more, so he's going to be on our team, but here's a different player in a different position who you should view as a draft prospect. So we're going to be thorough, but we want to make it quick. There's some special nuggets throughout. We're not going to spoil it now, but we'll get right in to the draft. I think we're going to start at our guard spot. I have to say the one takeaway and one negative that I could have from my Portsmouth experience is the lack of true lead guard play.
Yeah, I would say that there were not enough true offensive initiators at Portsmouth. And we could see possessions get a little ISO heavy at times. You could see the ball sometimes would stick to some of the guards. And I think
early in games, they were definitely the ones that wanted to see if their shot was going. And granted, these are great players, but you want to be able to show off your talents and also show that you can contribute to winning, especially with players that you aren't really familiar with.
Yeah, I think definitely for guards, it's a tougher adjustment than it is for bigs, especially when you're the primary initiator. And it's also different as well because you're asked to play a different role than you're used to with probably 2 days of practice, essentially. And the thing is, though, to remember with this as well is like they're going to be asked to do this in summer league, you know? And they'll probably have a little bit more time, probably a couple of weeks, I'm guessing, but you're essentially going to be asked at the combine and summer league to be doing the exact same thing. I think Portsmouth as well is a great way for guys who are, hoping to go to other tournaments to get the opportunity of like, okay, this is what the combine process is like. You're going to be thrown in there with a bunch of guys. You're going to have to learn to play with them fast, and you're going to have to learn because every team had at least one NBA or WNBA coach, right? So you're going to have to learn very quickly, like, what these coaches want from players like you, right? And some guys adjusted to that, and some guys kind of just stayed in their element, which is fine. I understand doing that, but you could tell which guys were adjusting to the coaching and which guys were kind of just like, all right, I have my game. This is what I'm going to show.
And 100%, and it leads great into, I think, the guy that we're gonna come to an agreement on here about who we're gonna build a team around at the guard spot. There's guys that came in who wanted to show something, and it maybe wasn't something that they were known for as a player. And a big thing that we were just talking about is being able to adapt in different levels of competition, different 3-point line distances, or something that we all had to see for a lot of players. And the guys that I think showed out the most are the guys who were continually changing and adapting. And that's, I think, going to be something that we find consistently as guys that were able to find where they could contribute and where they could, compete in this event. And I think a guy who showed that he could compete by the end of the weekend for sure, for me, in a very unique way, and I'm sure you can touch on, Julian, is the Division II National Player of the Year, two-time KJ Jones the second.
So it was really interesting because I think my perspective on him changed after we talked. Because especially after talking to him, then watching him play on I think it was day 4 that we watched him play. Because I mean, the first game he was quiet. He didn't do a lot. He
And I
moved
think
the
maybe
ball fairly.
I think maybe watching back on the tape, we'll probably see that if I'm remembering correctly, he was pretty solid defensively. He was
Yeah.
moving the ball well, and he was being a solid connector. And I think he had some rebounds. I'd have to look at the box scores, but we're not here to count box score stats. That's not what we're about.
No, it didn't seem like he was not out of the game, but it didn't quite seem like he was a key component in the game. And then on day 3, he decides he's just going to take over and erupts. He went 4-4 in the first half, was much more aggressive with the ball in his hands, and kind of sent a message of like, hey, like, I was trying to show what I could do without putting up the points and without being aggressive. Like, but if you really want me to, I can go out there and do whatever I want. And the first thing that I was really looking for when we're building this team is guys who can get their own stuff off the dribble. And he is a guy who can get his own off the dribble. I think he's our primary goal.
Yeah, I think with this pick, how we're building our team around, I think we're gonna want him to, play through a shot first. I think that if he was on a roster in this tournament where he would have played through a shot at the beginning, he, would have probably been near the top in scoring, in my opinion. I think he showed that on day 4 that he's gonna let the game come to him. And that's why I want my lead guard. I want a guy who, can force the issue. And I think when he was consistently, one thing I noticed, in day 4, he was consistently getting 2 feet in the paint, and he wasn't, kind of slowing himself down. In the 4th game, he was being aggressive. He was attacking Jamarion Sharp, at the basket more aggressively and more consistently, which is something I want to see. Dude's 7'5", and KJ Jones is 6'6", but he did not fear him for a second. And that's stuff that, mentality wise, I just want to see. I think if I'm investing long term in a guard, KJ Jones is a great pick, and I think he'll fit well. Obviously length and probably positional versatility wise with me and Julian are going to probably pull together here. Mind you, me and Julian have not talked previously about any of these picks. We're making these all live together. We threw together a list of some suggestions that I had based off guys that we talked about. But, coming to the agreement here on KJ Jones, I like it. And I think long-term pro potential, he's got a lot of stuff that's untapped. For a guy who played at the Division II level, looked extremely comfortable as an athlete against a lot of these guys at Portsmouth, and showed out obviously on day 4. So I can't argue with it. Moving to the wing, I'll initiate this conversation and kind of bouncing off where we went with KJ. I'm thinking that we need a guy here who can add like another element of that, kind of do it all mentality, but can flip the switch. And he's actually not on our sheet. And I'm going to say, Julian, you spoke with this guy, and he was on the championship winning team, Yanni King. I can't believe I forgot him in the list, but I'm going to say Alan Flanagan. I think I would say is a great wing to bring in, has good length out of Mississippi, And he's got to be the guy that I bring to the table, Julian. I'm hoping you agree with me because I think he had a phenomenal showing. Even though the shot wasn't falling the whole time, he found several ways to impact the game. And a lot of guys were doing that, but he specifically stuck out in my head.
For me, the thing that I loved about what he brought is the defense. When I talked, so I talked, for those of you who don't know, I actually missed the first. I mean, probably none of you though know about this, but I actually missed the first half of KJ's last game because I was actually talking to Al off the record, just kind of getting to know him as a person. Great guy, for what it's worth, and he talked about like he thinks he can be a 3-and-D guy,
I,
and that's kind of what he was trying to showcase. He's interesting as well because, like, if for those of you who don't know his story, he was 5'8" in high school and just grew. Like he had a bone, like a leg issue, was on crutches for a while, and grew to 60. So he played guard because he had to, because he was 5'8", and grew in, and a lot of time was spent growing into that 6'6" frame. And athletically, I mean, his BAM testing was probably some of the best athletically at the event.
quick. He's agile, quick, gets after it, and he's got a nonstop motor too.
Yeah, and we talked about it at Portsmouth, where the thing defensively, you can have all the tools in the world, but motor is what's going to put the good defenders and the average defenders, separate them from the great defenders. And when you demonstrate game after game like that, especially given that he hasn't had to do that, right? Especially this year. They got knocked out. I was talking about, they got knocked out in the first round of the SEC tournament. They got knocked out in the first round of March. So he didn't really have to go through 3 games in 4 days until now. And that's the case for a decent amount of these guys. So for him to show out as much as he did, I mean, that team, that Yanni King team was played. I didn't think they were the best team in the tournament going in. I thought they were good. No,
I thought Roger Brown's. I thought the team that had Carlson, and some of those guys were gonna get after, and I thought they had a chance. And I'm not looking at the rosters directly, and it's been a long weekend, and they all kind of blend together at this point. But I know I was fond of their roster and was kind of rooting for Carlson, and maybe we'll talk about him in a moment, hopefully.
Yeah, but I mean that Yanni King team I thought was decent. I didn't think that they were gonna, because they rolled through that first game. And it's funny because the team that they beat, Norfolk Sports Club, torched the other 2 teams that they played, torched them. I mean, we were watching the last game that we were able to catch was a 30-point blowout, where probably a couple of other guys that we're going to talk about here were on that team as well. But yeah, Alan Flanagan definitely is a guy. I didn't have him as my pick here. I'm sure we can talk about. You want me to tell you the other guys that I had?
Yeah, because I was gonna do the same.
So the 2 guys that I had.
Let's go honorable mentions, combo guards, because this is we're talking about our 1-2s here with these last 2 picks. Honorable mentions.
So honorable mention for me.
Guy that you could possibly bring up for our, we're picking 8 guys here. So, maybe a guy that you're not going to bring up in that conversation. Just
I know he didn't have the best Portsmouth, but I still really love Keenan Blackshear. The playmaking was just so much fun. He does the connector stuff really, really well. I still have concerns about the shot, and that's my only hesitation for him. But I think as an honorable mention, he's a fun one.
Yeah, he didn't have the best performance, but I still liked him a lot.
Yeah, another guy I think definitely at least like deserves a mention because he played well is his backcourt mate Jared Lucas, who just absolutely was on fire off the dribble.
He looked like the most pro ready guard there for sure. In my opinion, I think that he is. I said it. I think he could, if his high end outcome as a prospect is being one of the top scorers in Europe.
I agree. I think he is easily. Again, small guard's probably not going to make it in the
He's
NBA.
like 6'2", 6'3", and scrappy as hell.
Yep. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if he sticks around.
He was low key. He was low key who I was going to bring up for our guard spot. It's going to be like, hey, if we want to compete at the PIT, we need Gerard Lucas.
I just wanted to give Keenan a shout, man. I love
No,
watching that man play.
yeah, 100%. Your third?
Um, honestly, this is where it gets tough because I don't want to mention someone that I want to mention later. But if I had to make a third, well, I don't know because both the guys that I would be thinking of we're probably going to mention later. I want to hear yours. I want to hear yours.
I think a guy that I like just generally going in, and shout out Nate Kazel. I've seen him giving him some love. Shawnee's the second out of Missouri. An interesting combo guard who can do a little bit of everything. I really, really like his scoring package, and some of the things that he was able to do, this past year at Missouri. He had a good game at the PIT. I don't think he stood out really by any means. Not discredit to his game. It's just not the environment that's going to be conducive to a small combo guard, who's not really a one at all. So yeah, it's gonna be tough for a guy like that to be super productive. Besides, when a shot's falling, so that was maybe draws me away from a guy like him, to mention later. And then another guy that I will mention is Hunter Couture, who had an awesome showing on day 3, if I'm not mistaken. Him and Gerard Lucas were going at it, if I'm remembering correctly, and it was a fun game to watch. Another knockdown shooter, kind of similar, the same ilk as Gerard, maybe not to the same consistency, but has a little bit more of that grittiness as a defender and is more presence as a rebounder, which I really love. And again, another guy who I think his high end outcome, he's a really, really freaking good player in Europe, dude.
Yeah, man, he especially at the defensive end was a ton of fun to watch. In all the games that he played. Because in the first game, like he wasn't shooting the ball particularly well. And that's always a great indicator for me is like a guy's not shooting well. He's not having a great game offensively. What is he doing? What else is he doing? Right. And Hunter was just everywhere. He was
Yeah, I don't think
everywhere.
I don't think him or Gerard are the type of guys that if you're a scout looking for a guy who's going to disappear in games as at the guard spot, if their shot's not falling, those are the two guys that if that's your eval on them, you're off. You're missing something, because they showed out when they knew that they needed to. Moving towards our wing spot, this is kind of our three, that we're kind of fitting in our positionless basketball, but more how I like to model our team in this format. I think we want to get a guy who can play a little bit on the perimeter, and can be switchable, kind of 1 through 4, maybe 1 through 5.
We have three really good options.
There's a lot of really good options here. Um, I have to go with the guy that I think if you have him on your team at PIT and you surround him with, good spacing, like I think we're about to, um, in the front court, I really, really like Isaiah Crawford.
The defensive switching and just how flawless he was, how easily he moves his feet. The little like I saw a couple of like very, very like when I say uncharacteristic, I mean uncharacteristic for normal defensive plays that he made. Like he got a back tap off. Like he definitely met someone up there at some point. Just the ability to just lock people down on drives
And his
was
rebounding presence. I mean, his verticality is awesome. His arms go forever. He's got huge hands. Gets his hands on, everything. And it's just impressive. His activity is impressive and shot 43% from 3 this year. Granted on, not the best volume, but the shot still looks good. I like the shot. I don't mind it. I don't think it's, your conventional knockdown jump shot. And I don't think this is a guy who should be deemed an offensive prospect by any means. I think he has some interesting tools, high IQ. I think he can really move the ball well. Has that pedigree as a veteran player. This is a guy who I think maybe comes out of this tournament as the most helped player, quite easily on a lot of boards. And I think he already going in was the most like hyped, like prospect.
I think there's a guy who was a little bit more helped, and I may be biased here because I really liked him in the first game.
Because I'm not gonna debate putting him at the 4 if that's where you want to go with it.
I mean, like to be fair, and I do want to say this before, everyone's like, "Oh, you're jumping on the bandwagon. People already said this, blah blah." From the first game that we watched, I thought Tristan Enaruna was the best player there. And I mean, he showed just about everything, honestly. He showed an ability to drive. He was rebounding, good passing. He shot the three like not terribly. And like he just did everything. Um on both ends of the floor. Like I was honestly I'd seen him play before, obviously, and I thought he was a good player. I did not think that he would dominate the PIT the way he did, at all. And the versatility that he displayed on both ends of the floor, again, multiple level shot maker. He was able to get to his spots off the dribble as well. Um, Great verticality, can steal the like. I can't look at anything that he did in the tournament and be like, wow, he didn't do that well. You know what I mean? Like, and again, this is at the Portsmouth Invitational, so this is not me saying that Tristan Enaruna all of a sudden should be a first round pick on everyone's board. But I think at the very least he's going to get a two-way vote, at the very least, and I would not be surprised if he gets to hear his name called in the draft.
Yeah, I think if anybody came out of this better than Isaiah Crawford, it's the MVP of the whole dang thing. And a champion at that of this event. I was impressed a lot with just some of the savviness that he has as a player. Just his movement is really fluid. Great mover on offense with the ball in his hands as well, which is I think something that I didn't really anticipate seeing from previous tape. I thought he was much more of an impact player out of the dunker spot, and can take guys in isolation occasionally. I didn't think that he was going to be taking guys off the dribble this consistently, and that was really going to be part of his scoring bag, because that's, at the end of the day, like the wings in this game have to be the guys that are scoring the ball, because that's just, what that this type of environment presents is a lot of size, more type of NBA size than a lot of these guys are going to face on a consistent basis in some of these smaller conferences. And Tristan Enaruna rose to the occasion quite well. Obviously, the results spoke for themselves. And I'll attest to Julian. Julian, picked him out on the first day and said that's the best player in the gym, and it remained true and to the end of the weekend. So great piece of eval. And nobody's gonna take that away from you, because I mean everybody in the goddamn gym who would listen to you heard you say it. So at the end of the day, he did awesome. And I look forward to seeing more, and he's again a guy that I need to do a deep dive on. Next, kind of moving here to the 5 spot, there's some different ways that we could go with it. Julian, do you want to or I guess let's kind of do our honorable mentions here for the 3-4.
Yeah, so
I'm
it's
thinking
the
one each,
yeah, man, I don't know which one I want to do. They're both great.
just to take one off our draft board here.
Um, dude, who did you take off the board? Oh my God, am I blind? Did you take okay, you took the player that I think you took him off the top part of the board. Um, so I want to talk about Isaac Jones because I loved watching him play this weekend. Um, he, him and Eric Dixon just shut down Soriano that second game. Like Soriano, in my eyes, was the second best player in that game against Enaruna. He was nowhere to be found, in part because he had two very physical 6'8" forwards just dominating both on the glass and on the interior. And Isaac Jones was a big part of that.
You're
The
gonna
shot
be stunned to
making,
hear this.
the
So
shot, yeah,
Isaac Jones was the guy I was gonna possibly pitch to you to be our small ball 5.
really.
I thought we could get really spicy with it.
So it's funny because I was gonna pitch Dixon to use our small ball 5
Okay.
and
I
have
like I think Isaac is just an incredible athlete, and he impressed me so much on his interior defense. And I think if we have a front court of Crawford and Aruna and Isaac Jones. We have the best athletes there, in my opinion. Besides maybe like Tony
So
Smith, Jesse Edwards. Like,
yeah,
I mean, and Jesse Edwards was the guy I was going to bring up. If, we're getting polish at every other position, maybe this is a position where we swing for a, like, just a pure rim protector. And to kind of, this is where I was starting to think in the strategy of the tournament. Do we want to let Jesse Edwards be on another team? Do we want to let Isaac Jones be on another team? And these are the real things that, you have to start to think through as a drafter. Um, but
so
it's not easy.
it's
And the
it's
thing with
funny because
Jones, that I was interrupting you. I'm sorry. Jones does have the ability to stretch the floor, possibly. Um,
that was yeah, so that was kind of the path that I'm debating on as well, is like, do we want to truly just like, we've got these super switchy wings, do we want to freaking go all in and space the floor as much as humanly possible, or are we going to look for a little bit of rim protection? Because there were some bigs that were able to dominate pretty much. I mean, Tolu was dominant inside for long
100%.
periods of
And I
time.
mean, we can look to that on our bench because I think we can get substantial size and still space the floor off our bench. But just the idea of Isaac Jones being like our five man, we're running five out. And then, it's just and the only time he's really stepping in the paint is, cutting from the corner, just making basic reads off, drives, just dump off passes and catching lobs like he was doing, crashing the
He
glass. And I
he
mean,
dunked everything.
and he was unreal in the pick and roll. His
He dunked
timing,
everything.
his
Literally
timing,
everything. Yeah, timing, his ability to just
positioning, the angles he was taking, everything was flawless. And on defense, he took, one of the bigger big men, post presence wise, out of the game entirely. I don't know. I really like Isaac Jones.
I'm not gonna fight you on it because I also really liked him, and I think it's worth putting him in the who was your honorable mention?
What?
Who was your honorable mention?
If we're gonna go with Isaac Jones at the five, instead of having him be your honorable mention, I'm gonna ask you to give an honorable mention first.
You are an absolute. All right, I'll go with Brandon Carlson. Um, I
Again, I was
was
gonna pitch to off the bench, but I like I like a lot of other guys here, and I think that there's other routes that we can go to get some really good players still. So I'll let
so
Brandon Carlson slip because I don't think he fits with the team image we have, unless we
yeah,
want
I
to bring him
think
off the bench at the four.
yeah, exactly. So we're gonna, if we're putting Isaac Jones at the five, we're gonna need someone else who's gonna be able to grab rebounds off the bench. And I think Carlson in this tournament, he held his own a little bit, but I mean, he's got to put on probably 30, 40 pounds at the very least to
I don't
be
know about that. Maybe 20 pounds of like good weight. But I
maybe
agree
20
with you.
pounds of
I
muscle.
think if we need rebounding off the bench, he's probably not the way to go.
No.
So for the
Great
sake,
floor
but I
spacer.
so for the sake of this, I'll let it slide. But I'm going to give my Carlson eval quick. Extremely fluid defender. I thought he was really fun for a 7 footer. And I think just the way he moves in general is impressive. I wasn't expecting him to be a better athlete than Drew Penber up close, but he was. And I think that that's something that should be very notable that, Brandon Carlson is a legit athlete and has some pedigree as a mover that separates him from just this standard cookie cutter, stiff, skinny white floor. You know what I mean? That's what people are really trying to pigeonhole him as. And I really think he can break out of that and become a more versatile defender. But he, like you said, if he wants to become somebody that, is a must pick in these type of situations, because the way he can shoot the ball makes him an extremely valuable
Yeah.
player at his size and his position. He's got to be a better rebounder. He has got to get better shots in the paint when he has mismatches, or he's got to have a bag that he can take advantage of some of these bigger, slower footed defenders. Even if it's a guy like Jamarion Sharp, you should have a package that you can get to get this guy off balance and be able to get to a better shot when you're such a capable shooter like he is. And that's something I think is going to continue to add nuance. He has a great, great floor skill set for a guy who's a little bit older. I know a lot of people are going to be concerned. You're naming a lot of things that he needs to work on. And those are things that, contribute correlate to productivity. I hear you. And it does impact my eval on him, and it's made it hard for me to put a guy that I really, really love the last couple of years and keep him right outside my top 60. But I'm not going to give up on Brandon because I think he's a great player, smart player, and has continually got better in a lot of small areas. So that's kind of my synopsis. I just want to make sure that he got, the flowers he deserved beyond just, what I put out there on Twitter.
Yeah, I think specifically for this tournament where you have guys who are willing and able to bang in the paint, right? That's kind of where having him at the 5 is a bit of a detriment, you know? And offensively, it's great because it means you can space the floor a lot better, but you're going to struggle on the glass and you're going to have issues against guys like Tolu Smith, Soriano, um, Tyrese Samuel, Fiedler, right? Like just named almost a quarter to half of the bigs in the tournament. I don't know offhand how many there were exactly, but like those are matchup problems.
10. I think there's probably about 10 true centers. And I'm going to name one of them who's kind of fringe, but I think has project prospects as a guy who, we're talking about before where Carlson maybe doesn't have upside. I think this guy has a ton of upside strictly off his athletic ability and his measurements. And that's Enrique Freeman. I thought was really impressive as a mover. And a guy that, I wasn't very sold on because I don't think he has an NBA skill really, besides his athleticism and his athletic profile. But hey, I think that this is the type of kid that, if you like athleticism, you like a guy who can get up and down and come off the bench. I think he's a perfect G League project, in my opinion, and I'm not going to be shocked to see him, inking some form of a two-way deal. I think a team's going to buy his physical profile, and somebody's going to get in somebody's ear, and Enrique Freeman's going to end up somewhere.
Yeah,
I
X10
think
guy.
X10 probably.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's kind of my recap. He's not really that complicated, but he was fun to
yeah,
watch
it
for
was
sure.
fun.
Guard wing off the bench. Actually, you know what? I'm thinking we have a player that's so good he warrants immediate attention because I think this is a guy that you can build a bench around. Um,
I know exactly who you're gonna say.
and I'm gonna send it to Julian. Yes, I'm gonna send it to Julian, who's was at the Portsmouth Invitational Tournament. We're gonna turn back the clock here on the clock, and we're gonna give you guys a little bit of our interview with Eric Dixon, the 6'9" Villanova senior forward. Take it away, Julian.
All right, guys, welcome. We are on the clock. Got a special guest here for us today. Welcome to the pod, Eric Dixon. Eric, it's glad to have you on, man.
Thank you, man. Good to be here.
Fucking, it's crazy. Like, this is my first interview with a college player. For those of you who probably don't know, I kind of got this because I used to watch Eric play in high school. I went to Cheltenham. He went to our rival school, Abington, and we will boo the hell out of you, man.
Yeah, I mean, it's always great to see somebody from the area out and about doing good things, especially somebody had good success against back in the day.
Yeah, it never really went well. Speaking of having good success, how have you felt that so far the Portsmouth's gone for you?
It's been great, man. I've been lucky to have a good group of guys that's been good teammates. We've been sharing the ball, playing hard, talking to each other. So that's all I really want to do, just make sure we come out here and play good team basketball.
Have you felt like you've shown what you wanted to show for scouts who are kind of looking at you in the NBA? Has that been like and if not, like what are some things that you want to show more of as the weekend wraps up?
Yeah, I think I've had a great opportunity, play alongside two talented big men and two talented, shot blocking or protected type of guys. So for me, I just want to keep showing more and more defense. Can never show too much, can never show enough. So just want to keep going out there and doing that.
Love that, man. So let's take it all the way back. As I mentioned before, you went to Abington High School. Probably the best player, most high-profile player at this point to come out of Abington. What was your journey through Abington like, and kind of when was the moment? Obviously, you mentioned when we talked before the game against us, but when was the moment that you kind of knew, like, all right, I belong here and I'm ready to go?
Yeah, obviously, I grew up in Abington, super special place to me. I love being from there. I love everything about it. And I grew up, going to games and watching guys. So for you to say that, I appreciate that very much. It's not something I take lightly. And kind of when it clicked, I guess 9th grade going into 10th grade, man, and now I got to go out and play on the national circuit and bring back everything I learned back to Abington and take advantage of what I had learned, the knowledge and the spacing and everything and the confidence. I gained a lot of confidence in that summer in my game. So just from 10th grade on, I just felt like, it felt good to be there and like I was ready to make an impact.
So you carried that confidence, and obviously were recruited by a lot of D1 guys. Were you ever thinking about going out of state, or was Nova kind of pretty early on your first priority?
I think as a young 10th, 11th grader, when you first start to hear from these schools, it's easy to get blind and think that, I want to go out of state, I want to go here, I want to go there. But I think as I got older and as I realized what the community meant to me, I just wanted to be close to home so they could follow my journey and watch me grow or watch me struggle, whatever the case may be. But I wanted to make sure that everything could follow me.
Yeah, and I mean, your first year, you obviously didn't get to play at Nova, but that was a championship year, right? Am I right?
Year before me.
And what? Y'all killed me.
Year before.
They did
They did the background check.
They did not do a good job on the background check. That's my bad, bro. But obviously some of the guys from that championship team were still around when you got there. So what was it like kind of being around guys that you watched win a championship the year before, and you're coming into the program the year after that?
I already had great respect for the guys, championship or no championship. I was really committed to going there before they even got it done. So just to be a part of the program, like I said, I went there to learn the other things, the discipline, the work ethic, the playing together with other great players, and all that stuff's going to be their championship or not. But it was great for me to be able to see guys that I considered friends at that point, grew to be brothers, but guys that I considered friends at that point to have that kind of success.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. So again, with Nova, you've seen a lot of guys go through there, obviously have championship pedigree, and go on to have successful NBA careers. What are some things that you've seen guys doing at Nova that have gone to the NBA? Like obviously Hart, Brunson, and DiVincenzo weren't there when you were, but guys like that, and then guys like Gillespie and Sadiq Bey. What have you done to kind of emulate guys like that after seeing them have successful pro careers?
Yeah, so they all come back. Brunson, DiVincenzo, Hart. I've talked to all of them, have a relationship with all of them. They've all, come back and talk. So just work ethic, toughness, and them being physical is really what makes them who they are. It's dealing with basketball. At the end of the day, something we all take pride in being. It's just professionals and just coming every single day to work hard, be the best at whatever it asks you to be. Shooter, scorer, playmaker, teammate, whatever it is, be the best at it.
So continuing on that Villanova track, there we go. Got a couple follow-ups on that. So first off, you are one of the few players, especially in this new era, to go 5 years without transferring. What was the decision behind that, and kind of what do you think, if you were to tell a guy who's thinking about transferring 2, 3, 4 times over his college career, what would you tell him? Say, hey man, these are the benefits of staying with the program for 4 years.
I think I'm a unique situation. Like I just said, I'm from down the street. Abington's 25 minutes from Villanova.
Right.
So for me, it was bigger than just what the program and all that kind of stuff. For me, it was, like you said, I'm one of the best, if not the best player from the area. And if I can't get it done at this level, what are other people from the community going to think? What is my little brother going to think? How are they going to feel about that? Because it's not like I left somewhere. I didn't go to Kansas and came back home. I was right there the whole time. So it's kind of like I was running away from it. That's how I viewed it. That's how I felt about it. So I didn't want that, I just wanted to stay through and stick it out. But obviously, I think the benefits of it are you just get to stay through, go through a program. In a situation like mine, again, I got to grow up with great teammates. I had the same teammates for 3 years in a row, 9 of the same guys in that Final Four team in 2022. So for me, unique situation, but learn the program, learn the place, be comfortable are all benefits.
So speaking of learning the program and learning the place, you obviously in the middle of your career at Nova had a big change. Right, you went from Jay Wright to Neptune. What was it like system-wise, that you had to do differently from playing under Jay to playing under Kyle?
There was nothing that changed at all.
Really?
Literally, no changes. We didn't put up a new sign. We don't really have a new play, maybe one or two. Everything's the same. Terminology, the time we do things, the way we do things, how we operate. Everything's pretty much the same.
So he really kind of came in and went to you guys and was like, all right, what are you guys doing? And this is what we're going to do? This is what we've been doing?
He was he coached at Villanova for 12 years. He learned everything under Jay Wright for the most part, to my knowledge. He had a couple other stops. But, he learned the system. He believed in the system. And I think that was a big piece in why they brought him in. He believed in it. Mm-hmm. He believed in the place, and he knows how special a place it is. And so, yeah.
We could cut this part. I completely forgot that Kyle was an assistant. You know what it was? I was thinking that they brought someone in from outside. I completely forgot.
Well, he wasn't Fulham for the
That's what it was.
He was under the assistant.
Yeah.
That's
He was
okay.
12 years. Under the coach.
That's why I got confused. I was like, I knew he didn't like come straight from the assistant coach staff. Okay, got you. Forgive me for.
It's up to me. You know, I'm good. You know, yeah, all right.
All right, last one before I give it off to Caleb here. So obviously, when you're watching a player on TV, and you can't tell this as much in high school, I didn't realize how loud you are on the court, man. Like, hearing you at Portsmouth today, you're barking out everything, calling ices, calling screens, calling switches, all that stuff. Was that something that you just learned at Abington, or was that something that it took time at Nova for you to gain confidence to feel comfortable doing that on the court?
It definitely took time at Villanova. I think you give a lot of credit to Villanova for the vocal part of my game and understanding how important it is. Honestly, you could probably give Neptune a lot of credit for it the last 2 years. Just calling on me more as a leader and for me to orchestrate things on both sides of the floor, whether it be a play call, whether it be a defense that we're in. It helps know what you're talking about over time. So just gain basketball knowledge, but I think just being called upon to do it more and more in the late parts of my career have helped me in a setting like this one.
I love it, man. So we're going to cut it here. Actually, I'll give a segue first. So, since we talked about the vocal part of your game, let's get into the physical aspects of your game and kind of what you can bring to the next level. So we're going to bring in Caleb here to do a little film breakdown with you, and then we'll wrap up.
Sounds like a plan.
Let's do it.
Hey guys, Caleb. Thanks, Julian, for the great questions. We're still here with Eric Dixon. We're going to do a little segment that I call From the Tape. We're just going to watch a little bit of 2 minutes of film from his senior year at Villanova. And we got a little bit of flavor here, as you guys will probably see from the tape. We're looking at a lot of perimeter skills. And I think that that's something that you've shown here at Portsmouth, something you're going to continue to work on and grow. You've grown as a three-point shooter tremendously, but we'll talk about more about the specifics of stat stuff. But so here we're just kind of looking at some basic spot-up stuff. Where did you start to gain the confidence to shoot from actual legit NBA range? Was that came with building strength or?
Yeah, I mean, I've always been able to shoot. High school year, my senior year, I shot 75 threes. Something I've always been able to do. I think at Villanova, it's just, like I said, I've been blessed with so many talented guys. So just on a yearly basis, the personnel is changing. I think just the last few years, I've needed to be more of a shooter. And I think at Villanova, what I worked on is getting my feet ready quickly, being able to get it off effectively so that I could be a legitimate floor spacer if that's what the role I needed to be called upon to do.
100%. I think you do have the versatility because you've been so awesome in the paint, strong guy, able to bully kind of there. The thing that I like and have been impressed with here at Portsmouth, especially seeing you in person, is attacking guys off the drive. What are kind of your basic reads when a guy's closing out on you? Is it personnel thing, based on the player that you're going to attack him off the drive? If it's a big guy closing out, that you kind of got that quickness advantage. I know from the tape it's a lot of, quick jab or a quick up fake and drive. What's kind of your go-to moves there and reads?
Yeah, I mean, obviously I play off my jump shot. Something that we harp on at Villanova all the time. Play off your jump shot, play off your jump shot. So normally if I get to hit one, then it opens up the whole game. I can shot fake, I can go. If I see the guy running at me before I even have it, I'll go through it and just go right away. But it's all off the jump shot.
100%, love it. And then I'd say, the three-point shooting volume, just kind of a statistical thing. I'm sure you're aware that you shot a lot more threes. I think that that's something that, scouts will take note of, is that not only did you, maintain that, above 34, 35% from three, you had your sophomore year shot above 40%. And that volume's increased continually. Like you said, is that just, a mindset thing? I'm going to play through my jump shot when I have the opportunity because I know that makes me a better threat, helps your team spacing, obviously.
Yeah, my first few years, I played with Con Gillespie's, Justin Moore's,
great shooter,
Caleb Daniels, Jermaine Samuels, great shooters, guys that can really shoot the cover off the basketball. So for me, I have the ability to play on the paint, and that's what that team called for me to do. Screen, roll, be a paint presence for them. The last few years, we've had very talented drivers. You got TJ, you got Tyler, you got Mark. Justin, became more of a driver later on, down the stretch of his career. So for me, I just had to space the floor for this team. That's just what this team needed me to do at the end of the day. So I just wanted to make sure I was effective at it.
100%. Playing your role. And I think that's something that, whatever level of basketball you're going to go to, you have to find your role and figure out what your team needs. And, you've done a tremendous job being able to stay a really, really prominent player in the country by being that versatile and adaptable. I think the next thing that I wanted to talk about was some of the short roll stuff, specifically like out of the pick and roll. What are kind of, I found that you have great time in there, as you kind of see on that play where you're sitting in kind of that dunker spot. How did you, I know that's very like nuanced area of basketball. A lot of people probably don't understand. It's maybe even something that you just kind of do out of instincts, finding the open spot. But where did you develop that patience and understanding to really find the better passing angles to make yourself a real, like, easy target for your guards?
I think it just comes from me understanding my skill set. I understand I'm not a lob catching type of big man, so I gotta find an open spot and be able to make sure I have the space to make the right read. So if I drive and it's congested, I'm not gonna catch it and go right up and dunk it. I gotta make sure I'm in a good spot, and I've been doing that since I was in the 8th grade. I've been playing against high level athletes, taller guys than me. So just making sure I'm getting to an open area where not only am I comfortable, but the guys comfortable getting me the ball has always been a big part of my game.
Awesome. And then I think we got a couple more. What is, I've noticed that your footwork, especially under drives, is really developed. What is kind of your workout regimen, especially like on the interior, kind of working on your footwork? Is a lot of stuff that you've just grown as being kind of a post player, like you've been referencing through your first couple years. Do you feel like that translated, like that footwork translated, or was it something different that you kind of worked on over a summer?
I think playing the post as a kid definitely helped me with my footwork, just because it's something I always worked on, up and unders, hook shots, jump stops, and all that kind of stuff. And then obviously you get to Villanova and we work on footwork every single day. We play off 2 feet every single day. We do drills on that for 30, 45 minutes every single day. So over time it's going to get better and better. But yeah, I think playing in the post, especially as a younger guy, definitely helped advance it.
And it's going to help that timing as well, kind of when to make that move. That's kind of what also leads perfectly into what I was going to say is I think one thing that you can continue to do, to grow as a player is, especially expanding that playmaking. A lot of guys, like yourself, have that experience and pedigree as a post player. So over time, you're just going to get better at making reads out of the post, reading the doubles, reading the help. What is one thing that you think that, could like kind of break out your game? My perspective would be, increasing the playmaking. What is one thing that you want to add to your game that you think could, elevate you to the next level? Or what's one thing that you really want to work on? Is it shooting off the dribble, for example, or something like that?
I think I still work on making quicker decisions. I think I see things happen, and sometimes I hesitate to make the play. I think for me going forward, I just want to think quickly, react quickly, and make the play. Sometimes if you watch the film, like I'll get double teamed, and I'll let it come, and I'll let it, just disrupt my flow of offense instead of me disrupting them. You know what I mean? So I think just finding different ways to get through those different type of defenses that teams throw at me will be the next step in my career.
Awesome. I think that's a perfect way to close it. Great question. Awesome.
Thanks, Caleb. That was riveting. All right, moving on. Obviously, we're taking Eric Dixon here with our 6-man pick. Primarily, we're gonna keep it rolling. You guys are gonna deal with it, because that was awesome in introduction.
That was riveting.
Tell us what you think about Eric Dixon. Some of the things we talked about, obviously, with him. Kind of his role on what a potential NBA team is. What we're gonna provide for him here on our team at Portsmouth. The Caleb Miller, Julian Mendelsons.
Are we sponsoring our own?
Yeah, it's just our names.
It's just our names.
Yeah. Or Julian Mendelson, Caleb Millers.
Works for me.
Or Julian Caleb Mendelson Millers.
We just go with JCM and call it a day.
Yeah. JCM.
Yeah. There we go.
So our 6-man at JCM, Eric Dixon, obviously, we talked about his versatility as a roller and a popper, and I think that's what we need on our team. I think we're going to go with another guard spot and hopefully talk about somebody that we can find maybe to bring off the bench, because KJ is not necessarily an initiator of some of those actions, and we're kind of just hoping on that the versatility of all the guys on our roster will come together and form a cohesive unit. I think Eric Dixon provides good stability as a guy who can give us consistent touches inside and then also provide spacing, and he's athletic as hell.
Yeah, we can go five. There was one play at Portsmouth where he gets a guy closing out on the 3 and just goes baseline and destroys the rim.
It was probably it was one of my favorite dunks of the weekend.
Yeah, it was. I mean, the thing with Eric that's great is like he has that experience of going against these back to the basket guys in the Big East, but he's also able to get out when they decide to space the floor on the perimeter, right? He switched really, really well. I mean, we talked about it with him, but like he was the loudest guy on the court when he was out there, calling screens, switching screens. And there were not that I did not see very many times, if any, when there were blown communications leading to buckets on that team, especially in the second two games when they kind of had things humming. He was a big part of that, man. Like we talked about Isaac Jones shutting down Soriano, and obviously Isaac Jones did play a big part, but like let's not dismiss that Eric did also play a big part in that. Like it was two guys who are 6'8", can move just as well as Joel can, who are just as strong as Joel is, dominating him on the side. And Dixon was hitting threes, man. He can shoot the ball. I mean, it's the Nova path to the NBA, right? No Nova big men are anywhere taller than 6'8". Nova big men, with the exception of I think Daniel Sheffield, it's the only one who couldn't shoot. Nova big men can always play space the floor. They always play smart basketball. Like we've seen it year after year after year that Nova has these guys that come into the draft process underhyped, undervalued, and they exceed expectations. I don't know.
Dixon's no different.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know where he lands. I don't know what his, ceiling is. I think he can play a role in the NBA at some point.
Get this. Mo Spates.
Ooh. Sneaky. I like that. I like it.
I don't think he has quite the touch that Mo does, but then maybe I'm lying to myself because I totally think that he's along that same line. But Mo is special. Mo is special, and I don't want to, I don't want to undermine that. But I think the role projection is very similar
Yeah.
to like what it would look like. And I think maybe a 3-point shooting Mo Spates. Take out maybe a little bit of mid range and post touch. But I think Eric's still very capable down there and has been a phenomenal player. And as he's shifted away, maybe some of those things have gone to rust. I'm sure he could get back in his post bag tomorrow.
100%.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
He does what he needs to do to win, and that's what I really loved about sitting down and talking to him. Honorable mentions for the other like forward/big spots. I'm gonna do a quick fire. We've mentioned them both, Tolu Smith and Jesse Edwards. I think they're the most like standard cookie cutter big men there. And I think they're definitely the most. I think the third out of them would be like Will Baker. And I think Joel Soriano had a good weekend too. But I think like if you're looking for size, just domination around the rim, I think both these guys are going to end up being in the G League and having a long standing career or here in Europe, wherever it may be. I think both these guys, Jesse Edwards, a little bit more raw, but I think both of them are high impact players, and I enjoyed watching them get after it. I think they both were incredible paint presences, and that's all you can ask from guys at this size at some point. I mean, expecting these type of guys to be as dominant, work on their bodies all the time, be the strongest player on the court, be so active, and give their body on both ends of the floor. Not everybody can be asked to shoot the ball, and sometimes you have to appreciate players who they are. And I was able to appreciate Jesse Edwards and Tolu Smith this weekend a little bit more being in person than I was a lot this season. I still think that both of them, Jesse Edwards especially, just his defense is not as good as people may seem. I mean, people may think he definitely has some lapses on the awareness side, but the raw tools are incredible. Whereas Tolu Smith still has the raw tools, maybe not as prominent as Jesse, but has, unreal motor.
Yeah.
Unreal motor, and he's still savvy. Can put the ball on the floor on the open court, move the ball ahead quite quickly and well, finds open man, good roller. Those two guys weren't trying to do anything that they couldn't do, and I think it showed that they were very comfortable. So I got to give them props, even though they're not my cup of tea. Another guy who's not my cup of tea, who I'm honestly, I was going to bring him up, but I'm just not even going to because I wouldn't draft him in real life. No offense to him, but I want to give props to Aaron Estrada. Not your biggest fan, dude, but hey, you're a hooper. If you see this, all love here from Caleb Miller on the clock, but I don't like guards who are like allergic to passing the ball at times. And Aaron Stroud is a bucket, don't get me wrong. And, he can be an initiator when he wants to, gets downhill in the pick and roll better probably than anybody at this tournament. And it's probably one of the shiftiest handlers, maybe has the best and most complete like handle package, like in terms of breaking down a defender at this tournament. But yet I won't touch him because it's just these scoring come in droves and it can get your team and keep your team in a game like we saw countless times over and over again for Alabama. But when it comes time to play offense and control a game, a guy like Aaron Estrada can take you right out of ball games. And that's what he did early in a lot of these Portsmouth games. And, a lot of the stat padding came in these third quarters where he goes on these runs where it's, beat my guy off the dribble going right to the lay, whether it works or not. And it worked at Portsmouth. It's not going to work in the NBA. And that's the bottom line. There's just better athletes, better rim protection. The wings, when Isaiah Crawford switched on to him a little bit during the first game, when Aaron had a near 30 and was hooping, shut down immediately. Like can't get past him. You put an NBA ready, even an NBA average defender on him with bigger size, and he's just not going anywhere. And just as an evaluator, I get there and look at that. I'm just like, this is something that can deceive people, and I think he's a player that could deceive some eyes, but still, fuck it. I'd
Yeah.
and I'd be scared to play against him in this tournament, but I think we have the defenders to lock a guy like that down. I'd love to have him on our team. I think he would have been a good option off the bench as kind of a contrast to KJ, but I think they're more similar than they are, or they're more similar than they are different in this case. And I'd be more comfortable sticking with the guys who gonna let the game come to him instead of force the issue at times. That's my only problem with Aaron Estrada. Otherwise, he's gonna get buckets in the G League again. Another guy like Gerard Lucas, if he plays in Europe, he's having a phenomenal career and putting up 20 points per game. I guarantee it. That's my
Yeah,
only soapbox.
I mean, we were talking about it a lot during Portsmouth, and you kind of just said everything. We had this conversation for a while, and I don't have any qualms about it. I mean, that's kind of the bottom line of how I felt about it as well.
I think I'll get
Who?
another couple out of the way because I think we have a lot of names that we want to talk through here.
Yeah.
Talon Cooper had a great weekend. I thought he shot the ball really well. Um, I think that there's other guys who showed a little bit more in terms of being a connector and shot the ball really well. Quincy Olivari, guy that I didn't put on our sheet, but I was impressed by his motor and some of the things I saw from him. One of Rashad Phillips' guys. I'd be curious to see where he ends up in this draft process. I think he has a decent floor out of all these guys at Portsmouth, and he's a likely pro due to his athleticism. I think the shot mechanics are there. It's just a matter of time for that guy to adjust to the line. He seemed like he was really fretting with that NBA 3-point line, and it did not look good for some of the results on his jumper. Talon Cooper was much better in that area. Another guy that I think was good shooting from the NBA 3-point line, but just couldn't keep up with the level of athleticism that was going on was Marcus Delmask out of Illinois, who I enjoyed thoroughly this season. My type of guy, does a little bit of everything. Gritty defender. He was awesome on defense and boxes out better than anybody at the event. Again, just if we're not building our team around Marcus Delmask off the bench, if we got 8 spots, especially because we have our pick of the crop. I think the last guy I want to mention, and I know that he's one of your guys, is TJ Bickerstaff.
Yeah.
He is awesome, awesome athlete, awesome activity. At the end of the day, you have to do something besides rebound and play help point of attack defense.
Yeah, the scoring was a little bit frustrating to watch from him. You could tell he was
Great
struggling with
playmaker, has
drives.
great feel, knows the
Yeah.
game.
Yeah, but the big thing I noticed is especially getting to the rim against these, I mean, close enough to NBA, possibly NBA bigs. That's where he really struggled. I don't think he created enough space. I don't think he shot the ball at his best. And I do think again, like he's a hustle guy, and I think if he had shown off a bit more offensive ability, he could have had like the Jordan Usher PIT. Um, and I think that he's a guy that like could be that kind of player that like because of the effort and the intensity. I think he should have like leaned into that a bit more than he did,
Yeah.
to be honest. I love him to death. I was a little disappointed because I feel like he didn't quite lean into that enough.
Yeah, he was He was a fine watch, and I think he was productive. I just as a prospect, he's just going to be a guy that contributes in a role that you give him. I think Dante Scott played very similarly to him, where just solid connector pieces can play defense and guard multiple positions, but they have to have some sort of return skill, and they have to be able to space the floor if they can't put the ball on the floor and attack the rim and get past guys, which neither of them were able to do. I know Dante Scott was a little banged up, and he actually made some really impressive passes, but um, you know, take what you can get. Um, we're gonna move to our actually making our pick here. We've been dragging along, cleared out our list. We're hitting the quick hitters. Now it's time for decision making time. At our wing forward, off the bench, we have quite the dilemma here. And I kind of got it down to 4, and I have one for sure honorable mention that I wanna make and make sure we make the time for. Um, what are you thinking? And I'll give you what I'm thinking.
I mean, it's tough because both of the guys that I want to put on, I feel like didn't have their best BIT.
That's what I was gonna say.
Um, like if we're going based on who had the best tournament,
I think I know who I want to pick, and it's gonna be a shocker. And I think the 3 guys that we don't pick are gonna be better pro prospects. But I have to give love to Kyle Road.
yeah, I agree. I knew this is where this conversation was
I
going, and I'm
mean,
kind of here for it.
the thing is, he's not by any means the best pro prospect of any of these 3 guys. But I would be hard pressed to find a better pure basketball player and a real hooper and a guy who knows the game, sees the game the right way, plays the game the right way, up and down, every time down, gets after it nonstop. Where we were talking about Eric Dixon being the most vocal player, Kyle Rowe was probably up there, but his effort, his intensity was the loudest in the gym whenever he was on the court.
Yeah, he was phenomenal. What I was really impressed with was he, you know how some shooters kind of like they're like, oh, three, close out, it doesn't matter, I'm fine. He's one of the shooters who did like started to realize that his shot was falling and that guys were gonna come out and attack him, and he was going to attack the rim, or he was going to two dribble jumper, like stuff like that. Like that for
He was
me,
getting to the paint. He was getting
yeah,
to the paint and finishing. He was getting to the paint and distributing by the end of the tournament because people were realizing we can't let this guy get to the rack because he's finishing around some of these like premier rim protectors. And that's the thing that pops to me is like he's getting these guys up in the air and getting them challenging them, and he's finding a way to finish through the contact, finish around them. Well-built guy, shocked at his frame in person. And I mean, I don't know if there's a guy that we want on this team more than him. I know he has a good relationship with Eric Dixon, and they're going to have fun off the bench. I'm sure they get along with KJ. Our team's got great personalities, and I think a lot of these guys are going to mesh well. And Kyle Road is the prototypical role player we want coming off the bench. I think if he's the worst player on our team, like pure basketball talent wise, like in terms of just raw athleticism mixed with pro potential, if he's the worst prospect we have by that, we're golden.
I agree.
Golden.
Like,
If this guy is your last man in your rotation, your team's really, really, really good, no matter what level of basketball you're playing at. And I think, maybe at the NBA level, he's not there yet, but I think that this is a guy. It takes one good summer for a player's like game to explode. And I think if he's a guy that shoots the ball like 40%, and maintains that clip and is able to find a way into the league, I'm hard pressed to believe he doesn't stick.
yeah, it's these random undrafted free agents. Like, all it takes is one chance and one good game to stick,
And I mean,
honestly.
if it's not, this is a premier starter in Europe day one.
Yeah,
Day one.
completely
So
agree.
major props to Kyle. We've been in contact with him, great dude. And we'll hopefully, we don't want to spoil too much. We don't want to spoil too much.
Shh. Should we,
Um,
should we get to the honorable mentions?
yeah, the 3 honorable mentions. I'll start off with the guy who's maybe the most interesting of the three, who's maybe the most enticing and unknown going in, Clarence Daniels. One of the best rebounding stories in the country this past year. Arms that go forever, just crazy impact. Really tried to get the shot going. He was really trying to, and I loved it though. I was there for it. I buy him long term. He's going to be in our top 100, I'm sure. And he's a guy that has a lot of potential. Can do a little bit of everything. I view him as kind of just a lesser version of what we got out of Isaiah Crawford, in terms of Isaiah Crawford's performance. Um, and it's perfectly fine because I'm happy that maybe we have Isaiah Crawford instead of Clarence Daniels. But if I was, didn't have Isaiah Crawford, I'd be more than happy to have Clarence Daniels fill that same role. And it kind of goes with all these guys, where then we'll move on to, I'll let you talk about Malevi Leons. Um, but another guy where it's like you know, we can't get Tristan Enaruna. All right. We get Malevi Leons.
Malify.
Malify.
That's his name.
Sorry. Malify Leons.
Yeah, he's a guy that I've been talking about all year. Is a guy that I really, really like as a prospect. And the defense was great. I mean, we all know what he can do on the defensive end. For me, I didn't think he was at his best with the ball in his hands. Some awkward turnovers. Didn't shoot the ball particularly great from three, or demonstrate a lot off the dribble, which I know he can do because I've seen him do at least some of it in college for Bradley. Um, I think he's really talented. And I think that he will play somewhere. And I think that he'll probably be at the worst playing in summer league and at least get a chance because the defensive switchability and potential and his length. He is so long and tall and big. And he moves really, really well and can basically be a weak side help defender for it doesn't matter who he has to guard, right? He can lock up your perimeter scorer if he really wants to, which he usually does, right? And I think for me, he's got to shoot the ball if he wants to get a chance because like I said before, like the dribble package isn't good enough yet. I think he needs to work on that a lot. But he's capable of being a decent shooter. I think that in order to stick in the
Shot looks
league,
good. The shot looks good in person, release wise. And I'll say that, where he lacks in his handle, it makes up for in positional size, and IQ. And I think he's got the savviness and, the bag, flat out the bag, to get to the basket, without, having a shot off the dribble or a true shot creation package. I think he's that quality of a player.
yeah, I mean, I would have liked to see a little bit more of it in Portsmouth.
100%. I mean, Tristan Enaruna was what we wanted to see from Malify Leons.
Yeah, I agree.
And that's just kind of the bottom line. And then leave it with my guy, the guy who I had highest on my board entering the weekend, Auburn's Jalen Williams. No, not either of the ones on the Oklahoma City Thunder. Thank you. I just love his game. High impact player, great athlete, can do a little bit of everything. Just same thing. Could have been the MVP of the whole dang thing, really. That's how talented he is. I think he had a little bit too many mouths to feed on his team, as most of the guys did. So it was kind of got a lot of guys ran into some interesting situations. And I think, what Yanni King had over a lot of the teams was positional size across the board, and they all had ball movement, and they all could really shoot the ball. And then they had, the tournament's best player, the tournament's most consistent big man game to game. And they had, the guy that we chose to be our 3 and D wing, and Alan Flanagan was their menace, the Keelan Boone. So it's like, an interesting team that they were able to put together. And I think, other teams, weren't as well put together. And I think Jalen was on a team where he didn't have the role that, those other guys had on other squads. So I don't think he got to show his full game. But from what he did show as just a pure impact player and an athlete, I was still impressed. And I still walk away from this, not being scared of him as a surefire second round prospect at the minimum in this draft. I think for some teams, he could be a guy that they look to take with possibly a late first. I don't know if the value is there. I think you're gonna definitely get better returns with a second round pick on this kid, but he's worth the talent. Like the talent's there.
Yeah, I think even though there were times where he kind of like blended in a little bit, I think he also showed a lot of flashes. Like the defense was so clearly there. We didn't really have to think about that too much. And like there were these like glimpses offensively where he looked like, okay, like Jalen could take over the game right now if he really wants to. And then, a couple of other guys on his team kind of were, with a heavy shot diet, started to take over the game, and he kind of fell back and pulled again. So I think, yeah, that's kind of what led to a slightly underwhelming Portsmouth for him. But I'm with Caleb here. Like, I do think that if you just look like Portsmouth for him, for some guys, like you can look at this one and say, okay, like this is what he can do. This is a good way to bolster the evaluation. For him, like I would look at context and go back and look at his season at Auburn rather than leaning on Portsmouth at all for this.
100%. I agree. And I think that that's definitely where the body of his work lies as where it's been most productive. The last 2 years, even. I mean, you can go back. The guard, our last spot, our guard wing, kind of, or we're going to have to come off the bench to relieve Alan Flanagan, KJ Jones, primarily. I think we have decent shooting on this team, but I don't know if we have good enough shooting on this team.
I think we do.
And I would like to get a guy who could shoot it, but I'm between two guys that I feel like are kind of eerily similar in their problems. And I want to give a shout out to Riley Minix, because he would be the pick here. Um, if I don't think he would be the right fit with this team.
No, I don't think so either.
Even though he's the type of
Looking
guy
at
like,
it.
and that scares me though as an evaluator, that I don't know if he'd mesh well on this team because I think there's a lot of guys that need the ball in their hands in our first unit and need actions run for them to reach their utmost potential across the board. And I think if we're just consistently running actions across, you know, we want somebody who can put the ball on the floor a little bit more to get us into those. I don't think, we're going to rely on Alan Flanagan and KJ Jones to initiate a lot of that stuff. And I'd rather have like a true guy who can be a combo guard. And I think Riley, to some, maybe presented some on ball potential. Um, he's just, his post volume should terrify you if you're banking on his analytics.
Yeah, I was a little frustrated watching him play at times. I think he might have been a little frustrated given the situation where he's on a team where he's not getting a heavy shot diet, and there's guys who are very, very shot happy on that team. But I think there were also times where he kind of looked like a deer in the headlights when he got the ball a little bit, and that's kind of what terrified me.
I think he's a good
Because if
communicator, played solid defense. Like he'll be all right. Um, I just don't think it was the performance that a lot of people were looking for. I think he'll still have a good pre-draft prospect process and be in our top 100.
yeah, I
The jump shot's worth the investment to some extent.
Yeah, I mean that to me, that's a like what I saw from him was a bit of a red flag.
Yeah,
Um,
I hear you, but I
and
think the jump shot was worth the investment to some extent, but not here on our team for the PIT. I think that guy, in my opinion, is somebody that I've been a huge fan of for the last couple of years. I feel really strong about his eval in terms of being a guy that I know can come in and play either guard spot and impact the game the minute he touches the court with his energy. And I think he fits perfectly with this squad. And off the bench, I think he fits perfectly with a guy like Eric Dixon who can give him space. The Eric to Eric connection and the pick and roll.
yeah, I was
Give me
when we
Eric
were
Ames.
but when we initially came up with this idea, well, you came up with this idea. Uh, when you came up with this idea and told me about it, like I immediately was like 6 man hurricanes.
It was in my head. It was Aaron Estrada or Eric Gaines, and I eliminated Aaron Estrada earlier, so we had to pick Eric Gaines here.
Yeah, I mean,
The other guy I was thinking Raekwon Battle. Um, he's fun. I like him kind of. I'm not really sure where I stand on him. He's an eval that I need to do. I know he can score the ball, and I've seen him score the ball, and I saw him shoot the ball. That's for sure. Saw him shoot it a lot.
well, it's it's
And
funny.
I know he's a scrappy defender. And that's why I was like, maybe we go for a bigger combo guard, but I think we have the same player in Alan Flanagan. I think Alan Flanagan's a better version of Raekwon Battle and in this setting was more successful. I think he's just a little bit more willing to move off the ball without the set being directly run for him.
Yeah, no, it was funny because like the first night, like they needed Raekwon. That
It was
team needed
Raekwon.
Raekwon.
They needed him to shoot. And then when he came back to other games, they needed him to stop shooting and needed him
It
just to
was
initiate offense, come off the screen, be a threat just by having the ball in your hands and move it, kid. And he just, once he got there, he realized that he missed a game and had a game behind of field goal attempts than anybody
no.
else, and he had to
I
catch up.
couldn't. I was thinking the exact same joke in my head.
He had to catch up, dude. I don't blame him. You know what I mean?
He's gotta look.
Hey, he's there to shoot, and he definitely did his job. And I like him as a player. I'd
Yeah,
rather go get an eval from him in a normal context because this did not do him any justice whatsoever. I hope that his agent is or somebody's trying to bury this tape for him, at least in some of those interviews. Where like, what's this shot coming off a screen? You didn't really come off tight to the screen, and you caught it, going out towards the 3-point line. We kind of want scoring yourself up to the basket, and you just the one dribble you used drove you further away from the basket, and then you took the shot. It's all opposite of what you want your like combo scorer. I mean, if you think about textbook, Steph Curry, I mean, even not even just the Devin Booker mid-range stuff off screens, those curl cuts, but just the classic Curry, just playing yourself right on the inside of the screen. You don't need a dribble to get yourself more space and more distance away from the basket to chuck up an off-balance shot. And it's
I
just
think I think some guys who are microwave scorers like that sometimes fall in the trap where they mechanically don't do necessarily the right things. They're like, the tougher I make this shot, and when I make this shot, it's gonna look great. You know what I mean? And I don't like. I'm not saying that all microwave scorers are like that, but I think to some extent there is a little bit of in my head of like, oh, I'm gonna make this shot tough, and I'm gonna drill this tough shot, and it's gonna look really really cool.
and he
Not
did
really
make some
really
tough
cool, but like,
shots. He did make some
yeah,
tough shots for
he
sure.
did. But you can't only take tough shots.
Last shout out, Ray J. Dennis. He
Yeah.
was awesome. Probably the most consistent, like true one in the whole weekend. Um, I had fun with watching some of his stuff previous to PIT in anticipation that he might be a guy that shows out and warrants maybe another look as a smaller guard. Didn't really leave with that feeling like he's somebody that I need to dive back into, but I do like his steady presence and think he's another guy that leaves this event much better than he went going in than he was going into it in terms of showing that he belonged and they can compete against similar tier of players, athleticism, size wise to the NBA. And I think, again, Exhibit 10.
Yeah. All right. Now the main event, our last guy, Eric Gaines. So I want to talk about him first. I want to talk about the concerns I have with him because we know what the talent is, right? Two. One, I would love to see him become a little bit better shooter. I think he's capable of doing it. Again, talent wise, he was probably one of the most talented players at the tournament from just a raw talent, like through his path from LSU to UAB, right? Um, and the other thing is sometimes he just makes really bad decisions.
He rushes a
Um,
little bit.
he rushes a little. I mean, on both ends of the floor. Sometimes he just plays
Hey,
faster than he's processing, if that makes sense.
that's what when I'm buying Eric Gaines, that's what I'm buying. And I'm okay with it sometimes. I'd rather him have him do that on both ends and be that impactful because he really can be, and he can make, plays without it being scoring on offense. He can be a playmaker at times, especially in the fast break. When he gets out, he is focused on getting an easy shot, regardless if it's coming from himself or from a teammate. And the reality is just often he's faster than everybody on the court. He's beating everybody down.
Yeah, the one thing I'd like to see, because this has been an issue all 3 years. So I would like to believe that, like, okay, at some point he's going to slow his game down. And, like, if he slows his game down, he's going to be really, really good. And I would take a chance on him purely on that basis because the athleticism, the ability to get to the rim, the playmaking, defensively, he is a beast. Um, it's just the mental mistakes, man. And, like, I do think, and that's the thing as well, is like he was making them throughout the weekend, and that's a concern, right? Because you would hope that as the weekend goes on, the mistakes would decrease because that proves coachability. So for me, that's a bit of a concern. But like I can't argue from a talent perspective that like Eric Gaines probably should be in the NBA, you
Yeah, I
know?
mean, he's definitely. I think raw talent wise, he's probably the most talented player on our team.
Yeah. Um
And in
from
terms
like
of
if
pedigree,
yeah.
like him and Eric Dixon are definitely up there. And I like that we have them. I think we have a really complete 8-man roster. Um, Starting at the guard, we have KJ Jones the second, wing Allen Flanagan, wing Isaiah Crawford, forward Tristan Enaruna, big running small ball Isaac Jones, Eric Gaines and Kyle Rode off the bench in our backcourt. And last but not least, this last one, we're gonna send it back to ourselves in the past to mention and just remind you who our last and eighth final pick is. And we got another question or two for them too. So I hope you guys enjoy that. This has been us from this episode.
Steve?
All right, so we're back with Eric Dixon. So we're gonna ask one more question for him, and then we're gonna close. Eric, you're a Philly guy. This is an important question. Best cheesesteak in Philly, where is it?
I spent a lot of time at Villanova, so I'm going to have to go with Campus Corner. Shout out to my guys.
And then closer question, fate of the universe on the line. The Monstars took over, my Space Jam-esque. You yourself have to choose one player in the NBA to steal a skill set from. Who is it, and what skill is it?
LeBron James.
But what skill?
I think he does a lot of things very well. I think, if you're playing against the Monstars, you're going to need a high level of intelligence. So I'm going to try to take some of LeBron's, year 21 IQ.
I love it. That's a great answer. You want to close it?
I'm Eric Dixon, and we're off the clock.